In this movie, we'll fuse the two halves of this bottom portion of the cross together using the Shape Builder tool, and I'll give you a clearer sense of how it works. And then we'll build out the entire cross. I've saved my progress as the cross begins.ai, and I'm going to switch back over to my selection tool and marquee these two shapes in order to select them. Then I'll drop down to the Shape Builder tool, which allows me to fuse shapes together, and as you'll see later, you can also subtract one shape from another. A couple of movies ago, I gave it a keyboard shortcut of L so that we can get to it more easily. I'll select the tool, and notice as you hover over your selected shapes, they have to be selected, by the way, for this tool to work. You can see the intersecting areas, and the intersecting areas are indicated by this regular dot pattern here. You use the tool by dragging across the shapes that you want to fuse. So for example, if I just wanted to fuse this left portion of the cross along with the middle, I would just drag to the middle, and now that shape is independent of this shape on the right. If I were to press the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool and click off the shapes to deselect them, and then drag one of the shapes to a different location, you can see that we now have two different paths, one of which has the intersection fused to it, and the other of which has the intersection subtracted from it. Obviously, that's not what we want, but I want you to have a clear sense of how this tool works. So I'll press Ctrl-Z or Command-Z on the Mac a couple of times in order to restore the original shapes. And I'll press the L key in order to switch over to the Shape Builder tool. And then I'll go ahead and drag over all three intersecting areas in order to fuse the whole thing together. Now at this point, you want to make sure the Shape Builder tool is doing what you hope it would do. To check on that, because there can always be little fragments that are left behind, twirl open that drawing layer at the top of the layers panel, and sure enough, notice that we have a total of 3 paths where ideally we'd only want to have 1. To get rid of the extra paths, because we just don't need them in this case, press the Shift key and then click on the meatball, that little circle there, to the right of the obvious blue path, the one we want to keep. And then you'll see some leftovers down here at the bottom. At least in my case, that's where they appear. They might appear anywhere for you. And then just go ahead and press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac to get rid of those leftovers, and we have just the one blue path. Now let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit so that we can take in the entire cross. I'll press the Control key or the Command key on the Mac in order to temporarily access my black arrow tool, and I'll click on the shape to select it. Then I'll release the Control key or the Command key on the Mac, and we need to rotate the cross into the other regions there. Click and hold on the Reflect tool if you've been following along with me, and switch to the Rotate tool. And then press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and click at the intersection of those two central guidelines in order to bring up the Rotate dialog box. Change the angle value to 90 degrees and then click on the Copy button in order to create a copy of that shape. Now we want to fuse these two shapes together right now before we create any more copies. Go ahead and press the Control key or the Command key on the Mac in order to get that black arrow tool on the fly. Add the Shift key. So you should have the Control and Shift keys down. That would be Command and Shift on the Mac. And click on the bottom blue shape in order to select it. Now we have both shapes selected. You can go ahead and release the keys. Switch back to the Shape Builder tool. And notice that we now have a few intersecting areas going on, a little more than we had before. I'm going to zoom on in because we have, in my case, again, your results are going to be different. But in my case, I have these little slivers right there. I'll start by dragging diagonally across the 3 central areas of intersection. And that's going to leave a couple of wedges behind. At this point, I have to decide whether I want to keep them or not. Let's say I do. I'll just go ahead and drag like so inside that little guy to add it. And then I'll drag inside this little one to add it as well. And now I have just one path, as is evident here inside the Layers panel. That's exactly what I want, of course. Now I'll press the R key to switch back to the Rotate tool. And I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and click at the intersection of those guidelines again. This time I'll enter an angle value of 180 degrees because I want to rotate the cross shapes all the way like so. And I was able to preview that effect because preview is turned on, and I pressed the Tab key to accept the value. Then click on the Copy button in order to copy those shapes. Now press the Control and Shift keys again. That would be Command and Shift on the Mac, and click in that other blue shape, the one that's deselected, in order to select everything. Now we're going to go back to the Shape Builder tool, and I want you to drag like so. Notice we've got a lot of intersections. Again, we've got this little one right there, this little one, this one down here, this one down here. So a couple of different ways we could work. One is you can just go ahead and drag across like I showed you, but you're going to leave some fragments behind, which you might not want to do because that's going to involve a bunch more dragging. Or I'll press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that modification. You can press and hold the Shift key and just kind of marquee around everything that you want to include, like so. This is a really great technique associated with this tool. And that'll go ahead and join everything at once. And again, I can see that I have just one path outline, which is what I'm looking for, here inside the Layers panel. Now I'll go ahead and zoom out, maybe not that far, and I'll press Control-Shift-A or Command-Shift-A on the Mac in order to deselect the artwork. And you can see that we have this wonderfully intricate, symmetrical cross shape. In the next exercise, we'll begin building out this green shape right here, which is going to help to define the cross.